Hello, Jega. How are you?
I'm good, Vyasa. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Good as good can be, and it's always
Oh,
good with
great.
when there's games around.
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. This MCO has been a good experience of game design, playing games with kids. So finally, we get to visit the Axis and Allies game, a game which I
Okay.
bought several years ago, which is right here behind here. So
Yes.
somehow showed the kids how to play, and they played, and it was fun, lah. They had a very good political moment of playing World War II games.
Okay. Okay. So, any similarities you see with the games that is going on here and in other countries?
Games that's going on here, is it? As in like
The
what board
political
games?
scene.
Oh, of course, that's a big game. Honestly, which I think I will come to it a bit later once I
Yes.
introduce some philosophy on that. Because once you understand that, I will try to be not political, but I think it's important to understand things because when people understand the game behind it, you are more informed, and when you make decisions, you're not disappointed. Like after 2 years, you ask why is this happening. You won't ask that question when you really understand how the game is being played.
Right. Right. Yeah. One of the interesting things that I found while talking to you is like you were saying about games and how people perceive COVID and how is the COVID-19 games, which we will be talk COVID. How does it become a game actually, and how do we do things if it was a game, right?
Yeah, we'll come to that as well.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that really made me very curious. But today,
Okay.
friends, we have Jegatheeswaran Manoharan here. Okay, he's actually. Let me just read out a little bit about him. Uh, okay, so Jega is actually a director in Accordia Training and Development Sdn Bhd. Okay, they specialize in business simulations and team effectiveness. All right, and he has done a lot of this, and it drove me very curious how actually games relate to business, and also the confusion or the clarification which is needed for gamification. Right, we're gonna get all
Yeah.
of this sorted out today. And friends, if you have questions that is pertaining to this business games, it's a good time to ask because Jega is very involved in this whole thing. As you can see at the back of him, behind him, you can see Axis and Allies. Okay,
Yeah.
which is it's not a book, and he's definitely
I
not a
won't
book.
read that thick of a book.
Really. Okay, it's very interesting because like how do we bring games towards our corporate, towards in games in our business, and how do we make it fun, how do we relate to it, and how can we make help have games to help us work well in our business and corporate life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So, Jaga, could you actually explain a little bit about the word gamification and also like how games relate to the corporate side?
Okay. I want to really clear this air, lah, okay? And
Okay.
then this is my
Yeah.
chance, okay? Since it's live,
Right.
wherever I get a public setting, conference or what, I try my best to correct this because it has always been a confusion,
Yeah.
game-based learning and gamification.
Right.
So let's just make it clear, okay? What is game-based learning? A game-based learning is like you're using games to teach something. In other words, there is a lesson you want to deliver,
Okay.
and you want to deliver that, and you find that by playing a certain game, you will be able to deliver the lesson in a much more in a way where people can understand it easily. Like for example, two people throwing a ball at one another, and then they change the strategy of them throwing the ball, and the other person has to catch the ball, and then you can ask them about, like, so what did you learn when the ball changed the thing. then they say the game has changed. Now the ball is going in every direction. Now I have to look for where his hands are moving. Another, great. So where can you apply this? Let's look at sales. Let's look at how the business world is going. Before this, the ball was coming in one direction. It's so predictable. Right now, the ball is coming from different direction. So those are things what we call as game-based learning. You can use games to teach it. It can even be in a board game to teach about certain principles.
Right.
Now, and there's another level to it, which is called business simulation, where a human emotion and thinking pattern also comes into the game. I won't go deeper into that area, but the other part is gamification. Because what's happening today among trainers, especially, the real culprits are my colleagues. So where we use the term interchangeably between game-based learning and gamification.
Okay.
Now, what is gamification? Gamification, the very definition of it is to use game elements in non-gaming environment. So, for example, kids throwing rubbish and they are littering the school compound, for example. So how do you train the kids to throw rubbish into a dustbin? So let's say the dustbin has a sensor inside. Every time you throw something, the dustbin just lights up for like about 3 seconds. LED lamp where electricity is not so much, it just lights up a little bit. So what happens? The kids now will throw stuffs inside there with the hope of seeing the light turn on, rather than saying throwing rubbish everywhere. So that is an element of gamification. So you're putting a game-like environment to a non-gaming situation. A non-gaming situation is throwing rubbish. I mean, and we have figured it out last time when you're kids. Suddenly you get the thing. Okay, who can throw the can of Coke from here, or kick the can of Coke until it reaches the thing? While we are waiting for school bus, we used to do that. And we'll keep doing that until the school bus comes. So that's gamification. Gamification is using game element in non-gaming environment. So recently I saw it in one software. It's a learning software whereby the example, what they were doing is they had a lot of text and they wanted people to learn about the text about delegation, the text about prioritization and all that. So the content was the text. But in normal thing, when you send people PDF, e-learning, that's why e-learning actually fails. Nobody wants to read the text. But what they did was they created like an adventure, and you cannot pass the next adventure until you answer this question and do that. So the real thing is the adventure. People want to go through the adventure.
Yes.
But in the process of it, they are learning, they are reading things. So that is not game-based learning. I would consider that as a valid gamification.
Right. It's just like giving some short rewards or something like that, just when they do some action or take some, get some results.
Yes. And we have been doing that in classrooms all the time, when with the star, the schools, when teachers give you, a stamp on your book, and you come back home and say, I got 3 stars today, So just for the sake of the stars, they will answer question, when the teacher asks any question, I want to answer. So the main intention is you want them to answer, but you gamified it by creating something out of it. That's gamification.
Right. Okay. So when you talk about games here, are you referring to when we talk about games as we move on in our topic today, right?
Right.
Are we talking here about online games or board games?
Okay, I am very much a fan of those offline games. Okay, so there's 2 kinds of games there. The online games are video games. That's also another range of it, from simple video games to those you play in PS4, where really complex algorithms behind it. Okay, those are video games. The other one is what we call as analog games. So there's digital games and there's analog games. So analog games are the kind of games. A card game is an analog game. A board game is an analog game. A role-playing game is an analog game. What do you call it? Live action role play is also a form of analog game. So I am very much a fan of analog games. Right now with COVID, and I really have to think about the other side, but because analog games are so engaging, people are coming together, there's a lot of conversations. Even at home, when you play a board game, you see the level of family engagement that happens. It beats any movies or whatsoever.
Yes.
So we are referring to analog games here.
Okay. All right. And how, because I'm very curious, you are into team effectiveness, and how did you actually end up marrying games with business?
All right. Okay. What happened was when we first started the company back in 2007, it was a team building company, and we were doing
Right.
team building programs and all.
Right.
But one of the challenge we had was whenever we went into a classroom, went for a meeting, when we
Right.
showed our pictures, okay, these are the activities and all we were doing, and we had this thing. They looked at it, they say like, oh, ini kita dah buat ni. Oh, this one done. Last year we did this, right? Yeah, we did this, and that really, there was one meeting I remember, 3 consecutive slides, and they said that we have done this before, we have done this before. And I
Right.
knew, okay, the deal is gone,
Right.
and true enough, the deal is gone. We
Okay.
did not get the job, So Zairul and I started thinking, look, if we're going to be different, we need to create different stuff. We need to
Right.
create new games. And it
Right.
started with that way. We wanted to create new games for team building.
Right.
And as a result of it, one thing is I had a bit of exposure to business simulations, because prior to starting the company, I used to be selling, many years ago, I used to be selling business simulations, and I was sold out to the idea of business simulations and how you can create great engagement and learning. And because of that, we started creating games. And what happened was, one program, somebody looked at it, said that, hey, you know what, can you do this in classrooms? I have this particular situation. Could you do this in the classroom?
Right.
I said, yeah, because even in a team building, we did it in the classroom. So
Right.
obviously, just changing venue. And we did that. And later, what happened was, we went deeper into games. We started having some thought process behind games. And we came across this organization called the North American Simulation and Gaming Association, or NASAGA. Now, NASAGA has been in America for well over 50 years, 60 years, I believe. And it was a group of people who were game designers for the purpose of learning. They are not like the computer game designers. They're not the high-end game designers, but they are people who design learning experience. And we saw that, and we thought like, wow, no, God, there is actually a community behind it. And then we realized that there is also process in games. Like when you talk about coaching, in the past, everyone said, I'm a coach, I can do coaching and all that. Until we had some people in Malaysia who went and learned the proper coaching method, whether it's ICF or IAC coaching methodology, and they brought the coaching methodology. And today, coaching has a structure. There is a process to it. Same goes to facilitation. There is a structure. But games is one thing that everyone was doing, and sometimes we end up doing it wrongly. But what we realize is, as we dwell deeper on it, there is actually a structure in game design. If you are trying to create a certain kind of experience, there is a structure, and that's pretty much how the whole journey started, and the rest of it became history as we dwell on it. And then people started calling us, oh, you are the experts in game design. I don't know, sometimes I hear the word expert, so I think it's a very big word. There's still a long way to go, but that's how the journey has been.
Okay, because whenever I hear about you or see some of your posts, a lot of it is dealing with games, and what's your thought process behind the game. So I found it very interesting, and it drove me very curious. So then, hence this conversation today.
Yep.
Okay, so I know you use games and simulations for corporate clients. But what do you mean by applying game philosophy in business?
Okay. You see, a lot of things as I went into games and designing games for learning,
Right.
we went into deeper about understanding. You need to understand human emotions.
Okay.
So when you're trying to create a business simulation, it's about understanding about human emotion, how the mindset works, and you want to mimic that environment in the classroom. So the deeper I dwell into it, I started seeing games is nothing but just. So this is the philosophical part of games. Okay, you're not going to be technicality is how to design games here, but I started seeing games is nothing but just a miniaturization of what the real world is. I mean, you take a game like a chess, I remember once when I was a salesman selling industrial pumps, and we were doing complex sales. Now, whenever you're selling all these engineering products, it's complex sales, where there is a technical buyer, there's a financial buyer, there's a user buyer, and there's so many players inside this thing, So I asked my boss, boss, is there any course specifically for this? How do we know how to, there's so many people there, how to scouting everything and make sure your product stands out and your approach and all that. And he gave me one of the weirdest answer in the world. He said, do you play chess? I said, well, yeah. Yeah, why? Play chess. I said, what do you mean play chess? I said, yes. If you really want to understand the world of complex sales, play chess. And this was way before I came into the training world. So the thing about games is that there are so many decisions that is being made inside. It's human decisions. It's human motivation. The same motivation that happens in the real world is happening in the game. And one thing I like about game is that you start seeing personalities come out in a game. Yeah. Some people who cannot lose in real life, they will start showing it in a game. We have had a wonderful time when we created games for learning. You see some of the behaviors. I mean, we can really say who this guy is just by the way they play a game, like those who are collaborative, you will start seeing that the collaborative spirit will come in the game. Those who are non-competitive will find that they are non-competitive in the game. And those are heavily competitive, oh my God. Even the small, simplest game, of like rock, paper, scissors, 1, 2, zoom, even that they can be very competitive and all. But that's just how it is. So I started seeing a lot of parallel between these two worlds about games and real world. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. And I've seen that too, as in like, when I've been involved in some games and we can see the real character coming out, which is good actually, because sometimes in the actual trainings, people just hold back and, keep the other part of themselves, quite closed. So you don't really see the other side. But in the games, as we start playing, it starts coming out. The natural self starts coming out.
Yep. Correct. See, one thing happened. I'll just tell you the story. We were doing this one. There's one game that we had. It's a business simulation called Eastern Trading Company. It's been running well for over 13 years. The day we started the company, 6 months later, we worked on it. We created that. So that game is actually a collaborative game where you need to collaborate if you want to win. By design, it is a collaborative game. The option for you to become competitive in the game. So this was one quarry company. We were playing this with one quarry company.
Okay.
And what happened was, before we could redistribute them to sit in the place that we wanted them to sit, they just went and sat with their own department. And this was a big group. And I looked at it, I said like, oh my God, the room is so cramped. And by the time I move them, it's going to waste time. Tell you what, let them sit in whatever department they're sitting and let's just carry on. Right. So because we see the nature of this game, they need to communicate with other teams and all.
Right.
So in this game, they need to increase their profit, but at the same time, they need to balance relationship with others. So there's two kinds of scores at the end of the game. There's a relationship score and there's also a point score for it. Okay. And what we realize is the team that actually, there was one team with reasonable score. Okay, reasonable score. They did not win from the score, but their relationship level was pretty high. Another team actually scored way beyond the mark that we set. I mean, we set a certain mark and they scored like about 30% higher than that one. So that's really high, really high. But their relationship score was so low. And then, then that's what we wanted. We wanted to have a discussion. I mean, not that we planned it out that way. We wanted to have a discussion. And it turned out to be the guys who actually scored very high in results and very low in relationship were the sales guys. So what happened was, you see, and this is how you understand human nature. They are in the quarry business. And the quarry business is one of the most tough business because you're dealing with contractors, you're dealing with developers. They are very ruthless. Your clients are, if you sleep, they will run over you. They'll build a road over you, that kind of clients they have. They swear at their clients. and they can have a drink with their clients after that. That kind of relationship. And talking rough is the way. If you are too soft, you get played up, or they think that you can be, this guy, I can makan lah, this guy. So, but what happened is, the longer you start playing that game, it becomes part of your DNA. I mean, it's just like audit. You have friends in the audit. Long time they are in the audit. Everything around them is audited. You sit down having paper with them, they'll audit everything. You have a lawyer friend, also same thing. You have an accountant friend, same thing. So you see, our career shapes our personality. It starts forming our personality. And what happened is, it came as a realization. That game we played came as a realization to them, because right now they started realizing that, hey, yeah, you know what? We have to be tough. But we have to be tough with the outside world. We don't have to be tough with our own teammates over here.
Yeah.
Because some of them are, the accounts department, the girl, very timid, small size girl and all that. You don't have to be tough with her as much as you are tough out there. And that became a realization. And I do not know how else you will achieve that. I mean, we can talk about it, we can give theories, it will never be done. And that thing gave us a huge realization of that. I mean, gave them a huge realization, and also for us.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think like it really, when we see the games and how we play the games, and the best part is how we can see ourselves playing the games. A lot of realization comes immediately without any form of theory needed, right?
Yes, correct. So when you talk about games, you see, okay, now I relate. How does that I relate games to the business world?
Yeah.
A lot of times people say, okay, games. First thing you ask in a game is, who are the players?
Yeah.
Okay. When you know who are the players, the next one is you ask them, what's the motivation of every player? And if you play a game, you're actually asking that question. What's this guy's motivation? You're learning people's style in a game, which is similar to what happens in the real world. But here's where it's interesting. We talk about games. That it's not about the players. It's who are the players of this game that I am not seeing. So just now you asked about political.
Yeah.
This is where we ask the question. You see, in every game, there are players. The players that you see is the players that you are allowed to see, or the players that are visible to you. But who are the players that you are not seeing? And whenever I look at any business situation where it involves strategy, not everything. I mean, if not, you go cuckoo, think about games all the time. But but when you look at a certain situation and things are not working out, the next question you ask, okay, really, who are the players that I'm not seeing in this game? Take an example, sports. Talk about sports bet.
Yes.
Now, if you look at sports, without the betting element, then you're looking at it from, this team versus this team. Okay, there's only two teams playing there. Then you start counting about how well these guys are, how many, let's say soccer, football for the matter, how many strikers they have, what's their key skill, and then you put it against these players and all that. You try to start predicting it, which is okay if these are the only two players of the game. But what if there are players that you're not seeing in this game?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you start bringing the element of the players that you're not seeing in this game, then the entire game changes. The whole game changes, the entire philosophy behind this game changes. The outcome is also going to be very, very different. And the outcome will be not something that you expected. But if you understood the bigger scheme of things, then you start saying that this is predictable. This outcome is predictable because you had a better view about who are the other players that I'm not seeing. So we take that into a business context. You talk about strategy, about customers. You're coming up with ideas about customers. If you're really looking at customers as the only players, then I think, that's okay. That's one form of a game. But who are the other players around this whole thing? If you look at a team, there are team members in our own team. There are vendors. Everyone has their own interests. And there are customers. There are different kind of customers and all. And what we does is that you will never be able to discover all the players. But the very fact that you ask yourself that question, who are the players that I'm not seeing, it'll put you in a totally different dimension on how to analyze things, any situation for the matter.
Very interesting. Especially the one you mentioned is now about, like football. Because what we see normally in football, these are some of the things that we can see very clearly. You can see the players, can see the manager, and then we can see who's keep buying and selling. But like you mentioned, there's also some other unseen forces that are playing at the back, which we don't really know about, right? For example, like syndicates,
That's right.
the betting and all these things, and how they relate to the whole game. We don't see that.
We don't see that. And same goes to like in policies. We talk about government policies and all that. There are a lot of unseen players. You're not seeing all the players that that you think you are seeing. You're seeing beyond that. So that brings us to the other thing. Like what are the kind of games out there? So for once again for the viewers, if you're looking at game-based learning ideas and all that, I'm going to be talking about other things about games. Okay, I think there's a lot more dimension we are going to be covering about games here. I came across this book by James Cars. Is it Cars or Carsey? The book was written back in 1986. This is a very, very old book. But somehow it got lost in time until Simon Sinek brought it up again and wrote another book based on his book. Okay. Now I'll go back to the original book by James Cars. What he wrote there was, the title of the book is Finite and Infinite Games. And he practically broke games into two kinds of games. One is called the finite game. Another one is called the infinite game. So what is a finite game? What's the infinite game? A finite game has a final objective. It has an outcome. It has a definite winning criteria that has already been stated over there. An infinite game does not have the same outcome as a finite game. So basically what James Cars mentioned there was, he said, the finite games, the motivation of a finite game player is to end the game with a winner.
For example, chess.
Chess.
The finite
football,
game, right?
It's all finite game. These are all finite games. Most games are actually finite games. Now the infinite game is a game that the main motivation of the game is actually to keep the game going rather than to end the game. So this puts in a totally different perspective about a game that keeps going. Example, gambling is an infinite game. If you look at it, that's a total infinite game. People have been betting on numbers for like 30 years of their life, and most of the time they've been losing. But it's a game that is an infinite game. It keeps going. It keeps going. It keeps going. Multiple finite games, but the entire game itself is an infinite game. And when you look at it from a business perspective, people sometimes think that business world is actually a finite game. This is what Simon Sinek mentioned in his book. He wrote another book called The Infinite Game. And in his book, what he said was, business is actually an infinite game. There is no finite conclusion to the business world. The business world is not about finding an outcome. The business world is not about beating the competition. The business world actually is all about keeping the game going. And he gave one example. You can check out the YouTube. There's some example about the Vietnam War. And according to him, was during the Vietnam War, the Americans lost about 50,000 soldiers. The Vietnamese, this was based on what he mentioned, was about 3 million soldiers. But the ones who pulled out from the war was the Americans, because the Americans were aiming to play a finite game. They wanted the game where you can beat the opponent and it's done. Whereas the other side, they were playing for survival. So when you look at a person who's playing for survival, they will play and keep playing. And the rule that James Cars said, that if you play a finite game in an infinite game, you are bound to lose, because the infinite game is all about keeping the game going. And if you look at it, how we sometimes put targets in organization, the target is to beat the competition. So if you beat the competition, what you're trying to do is you're trying to play a finite game. Because beating the competition is a finite game. Then what? After you do that, what happens after that? I want to be number one. Okay, great. So once you become number one, what are you going to do after that? So it becomes a place, it becomes a game of position where you're trying to go after something which is not sustainable. It can wear you out because the entire game is actually an infinite game. The game actually goes on. If you become number one, next one you're going to think is, okay, how do I maintain number one?
Right.
And somebody is over there to always beat you. So question is, whether do we want to still play that game of actually being number one? Whereas if you change the entire perspective of this game and you look at it from an infinite game perspective, it's not about being number one. It's about bringing value to clients. It's about giving, being different in the market. If you look at AirAsia, is one good example I can give. I can't remember, I'm not sure, maybe I missed out, but I can't remember anywhere where AirAsia or Tony Fernandez ever said that we are going to be number one. All he said was, now everybody can fly, or now everyone can fly. And his whole purpose of that organization was all about keeping flying cheap, keeping flying affordable. You know, that was the whole thing about keeping it simple, about experience, about developing people and all that. And along the way, they got some awards, you know, but that was not the primary focus of the business. The primary focus of the business was just creating value. So the position today, you will be there, tomorrow you might not be there, you know, but the value that you're creating, you will continue creating. And that comes from a perspective of playing an infinite game. So that goes with anyone, you know, like you're a professional. If you're trying to become like the number one in my industry, you can. You're going to wear out your energy trying to beat your competition. And the thing is, you'll start focusing so much on the competition, you'll stop focusing about yourself. So in our own industry, training industry right now, I was just talking to some trainers today. We had a meeting with a client, and after the meeting finished, we were just chatting for a while. And we talked about like how some are getting a bit anxious because everyone is going online. Everyone is jumping into the online bandwagon of, you know, doing online delivery, and I'm not going to lose out, you know, what's going to happen to me and all that. You're playing a finite game. You're trying to play a finite game. You start looking at the whole thing from an infinite perspective. Infinite perspective is like, is this game for a short term or long haul? See, he who starts running first is not necessarily going to be the one who's going to finish the race.
Right.
In the infinite game, it's not about finishing the race. It's about keep on running. So you just have to keep running, keep doing the stuff without comparing yourself with others about what they are doing, but focusing a lot about the value that you are creating for your own business rather than trying to compare it with other people, because this is not a finite game. This is an infinite game.
Right. So what?
I hope I'm not being too philosophical. Huh?
It's okay, since the topic is philosophical, right?
Okay.
So we can let's just go on with it, right? So we can have good discussions, and people can come in with good questions and all. What for example, you mentioned case study about today, about the meeting with the trainers. I'm feeling left out, I'm not going online and all. What would you suggest, and how what to do, and how do you play these infinite games versus thinking about it as a finite?
Okay. A finite game always works around a deadline. Now, according to James Cars again, there could be a lot of finite games that you will play within an infinite game. Like, for example, gambling is an infinite game.
Okay.
But there are finite outcomes every time.
Okay.
You roll the dice, finite. Roll the dice, fine. But so that means, in other words, you will be playing a lot of finite game within an infinite space. Now, look at it from our business perspective, is that our purpose is actually to keep playing the game. So when you're talking about keep playing the game, what we want to do right now is, if you're talking from a perspective of a finite gamer, that means you're saying that I already have the solution. I know this is the best. This is the only way. This is the key. This is the way to do it, and there's no other way to do it. That's one of the most dangerous places to be in today's marketplace. But when you look at it from an infinite perspective, is that you never look at it from a perspective of winning. I wrote something here. Winning. Look at it from a perspective of exploring. What else can I do? what else can I do? And test that out. Test it out. And one thing about games, this one thing I like about games is that, in games you do a lot of testing. When you're playing, people say, you think should I do this? Can I? Okay, I sometimes you play this game called Ludo, and we have this system where you can cut the person and they go back to the house, thing.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you experiment. Should I do it? Will he do it back to me and all that? And you say, okay, I just do it. You will do that, because it's just a game. Like in a game of Monopoly. Okay, should I buy this? I mean, you try to think about it so much, you'll never buy anything. So, and the guys who actually win in a Monopoly is the moment they land in any property, they buy. They land in a property, they buy. They land in a property, they buy. They just keep buying. And then after they use that as a negotiation against the others. Whereas the one who plans out, Broadway and Park Lane, the two expensive ones, or Oxford Street or Regent Street and all that is where I want to go and get, and they start planning, okay, strategy, I'm going to go after. All you do is one guy comes and takes over the place, that's it, gone. Your opportunity is gone already from there. Okay, so instead of trying to play the game to win, you play the game from a perspective of exploring. So you don't compare yourself with other people. You keep coming up with new stuff. You come up with new ideas. You come up with new perspectives. What do you call it? What else can I go and search? Or you never look at it from a perspective of a boundary. You look at it from a perspective of a horizon. You become like an explorer, just like a game. You become an explorer rather than trying to finish the game. And in that perspective, you look at it this way. I give you one example of a game which was meant to be finite, but the way we played it made it infinite. Monopoly.
Right.
The actual rule of Monopoly is when you land on any space, you have to you buy the space, right? Now the rule says either you buy it. If you don't buy it, the bank will auction it. Other players can bid and buy it. Now that's the actual rule of Monopoly. But the Malaysian version,
I didn't know about that, until
of course. Neither did we. Most people do not know that that's the rule. We thought like, okay, don't buy. Okay, go. Next person roll the dice. It doesn't work that way. It goes into auction. The moment you go into auction, the game will finish fast. But what we do is that, don't want to buy, okay, keep going. Then after that, you're rolling the dice, hoping to hit the place and all that. And then the game takes a long time. Sometimes the game can go up to about a week. I've had that experience playing with my cousins last time. We'll stop the game, come back the next day, continue for about 3-4 hours, stop it, come back for one entire week. It never stops. Because another thing, we started introducing the game. We created IOU. So if you landed in a hotel and I got no money to pay, rule of Monopoly is, that's what Monopoly is, monopolize. You don't have the money, you're out of the game. Okay, you're bankrupt and all. But what we do is, okay, fine, I need to pay you 3,000. Okay, I owe you. Then you're hoping that guy will come and land in your hotel space and all that, and the game goes on like that. Now the question I used to ask is like, what were we playing it for? Honestly, we were not playing to win the game at that point. We were playing just for the fun of it. We were playing to just experience that, things are going to go that way, it's going to come back this way. Things will come back this way, will go back this way. So when you have that kind of perspective, like today you lose out a contract, say you go and bid, you send out a tender, it didn't come. Yeah, it's an infinite game. An infinite game mindset is like, it's okay, we wait, the next time we'll try again. Like sometimes there was one place I used to go, one particular organization, somehow the chemistry didn't work out, the L&D manager did not like me for don't know for what reason. Didn't like. So what we did was, so I told Zairo, it's okay. Let's give it about 3 years, then we'll go back. All these people move companies anyway. So you see, when you start having the infinite mindset, it's a totally different paradigm. You don't lose sleep over the fact that, oh, I lost this deal, what's going to happen to me, what's my future like and all. It's okay. 3 years later, the person would have moved on, we'll go back. And that's what's happening with one of the clients, one of the organization we are working with right now. We waited until the person moved. The day the person moved, just go back there. It's an infinite game. You play it very differently, Right.
Okay, so it's very interesting, this conversation about infinite versus finite, right? So there are some questions coming on this. First of all, Siti Zulaika said, no, it's not too philosophical. We understand, and let's just carry on with this, right? Okay, so let's keep the
Okay.
discussion here. It's a good conversation, yeah. And Patpal Singh Khosa asked a few questions regarding this infinite and finite games. Can you elaborate a little on infinite games design and its link to competition game theory? Okay, so that's the first one.
Okay.
All
Actually,
right,
it's not competition. It's co-opetition. It's another thing. It's
co-opetition.
another term. Yes.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
and then
Maybe okay. May I answer that first or what?
okay, there's a follow-up sentence related to this. This is Pratpal Singh from LinkedIn, right? So I brought this up to see if you can link the infinite concept and game theory. All right.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now, infinite games.
Yeah.
There are a lot of businesses actually today are operating from an infinite game. If you look
Okay.
at the term competition, I think Putpal will be better to tell you where the term came from. I first heard it from him also many years ago, but it was a term that someone wrote about. Competition and cooperation is what competition is all about.
Okay.
And that is a very important principle. Thanks, Paul, for bringing that up. That is a very important principle, and that can only come from somebody who is playing an infinite game. One good example, look at the telcos. The telcos are playing an infinite game. You see,
Okay.
the telcos, they can wipe out their competition if they want to,
Mm-hmm.
but they never wipe one another.
Mm-hmm.
They just make sure that the game is good enough that there is no new competitor coming into the market. But they will compete with one another. At the same time, they will collaborate with one another. Now, I do not know whether I can't say whether does the telcos actually have a meeting together or not. I'm not sure. But when I will look at the packages that comes from all the telcos, none of them can be compared like apple to apple. It's so difficult to compare, to the point where you start thinking like, I'll just stick to my product. I don't want to change service. It looks like, that I cannot compare. And I don't think that's happening by chance. I think that's by design. And that is one way of competition. And competition is a very important thing in an infinite game. There's one more thing, is about people wiping out competition. If you really understand the infinite game, you understand that wiping out your competition is one of the worst things that you can do to your own business. And let me tell you why. When you wipe out the competition, now you're the only one. When you're the only one, along with being the only one comes arrogance, comes lack of innovation, comes, then there is no need to think of new ways or enriching customer experience because you're the only one. All right? And this is slowly, once this thing stays long enough, the motivation to play the game is no longer there. I mean, look at it this way. If you're playing the game and you wiped out the competition, would you still like to play the game? I mean, what are you going to do throwing a dice going around Monopoly board alone? I mean, that's something is really wrong with this person. If he goes around throwing the dice, keep going and all, there is no motivation to carry on with the game. And what happens is that when that motivation goes down, you will start plateauing. And you know what happens when there is no players in the market? This is the most dangerous thing. Your competition going out the market is the dangerous thing. The reason why is because right now it invites new players into the market. And you need to learn about the new players. You do not know who is backing up this new player, and you do not know the strength that new player actually has, and it changes the entire game for you. So wiping out your competition may not be the right thing to do, and competition is possibly the best thing in an infinite game scenario. And most companies, the big guys, they all know about it. They will never wipe each other out.
Yeah, I remember the scenario, when we talk about competition, like, lawyers, they fight tooth and nail in the court. And then after that, they go out for a drink together, the on both sides of the case.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because, yeah. And also, again, like, if you don't have competitors, it's a dangerous place. I totally agree with you on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in fact, right now in our own training industry, there are a lot of trainers who are not jumping in or unable to get into the online space right now. And I know some people are already doing it. They're doing it quite well. That's great. And the worst that can happen to the industry is some trainers going out of business, because you will just change the entire playing field for new players to come in with new technology, new stuff that we might think that we are in the lead right now. It's a matter of time until somebody else comes and takes that lead away from us. Yeah.
Okay. So how can you use games to plan for a business?
Okay. About using games to plan for a business, I don't know whether I would like to see that way, unless there is a game out there that you can use to. You see, I would rather take it this way. You want to play a game to sharpen your skill
Okay.
in how you do things, rather than planning a business. There are some that can be used to plan business, especially if you have a business simulator. So if there's a business simulator, like for example, currently we have one product which is called the SimVenture Business Simulation, which is actually an entrepreneurial tool. So that's actually to help entrepreneurs not to make the mistake. So it's not so much of a planning tool. It's a scenario tool for people to go through it and make mistakes within that game long enough, the more mistakes, so that you don't have to do it in the real world. So like a flight simulator, you make the mistakes within the simulator so you don't have to do it in the real world. So if we talk about how do you plan, I wouldn't say we want to use a game to plan a business, but I would say you can use a game to sharpen your skill so you will know what to do when you want to plan a business.
Okay. So it's more like what you said, a simulation, like a flight simulator before you go into actual flights. This business simulation is like you make a lot of mistakes, real mistakes, before you actually go into the real game of business, so that there's less chance of making mistakes.
Yes, and also another thing is it heightens your level of awareness of the real world. I'll give you one example. This is one simulation that we ran in Reno, Nevada, back in 2017 during the NASAGA conference over there. So in one of the breakout sessions there, one of the simulations we played was a disaster area. It's a disaster zone. Earthquake actually hit, and this was a hypothetical country next to Russia. And like they just broke away from Russia and they are now declaring their own republic over there. So this hypothetical country actually had an earthquake and it's chaos over there. So all of us were the players over there and we all had our roles. So we were doctors, we were different roles we had, and we had all our attributes and everything. So in the disaster scenario, we are supposed to work together. And some of us have certain attributes which are better. So when it comes to like certain action you want to take in the game, you need to prove that I have this attribute so I can take that action. Like for example, media skills. I have media skills, so I want to take this action. So we had that kind of simulation. And the game master was trying to tell us that, look, we have the oil refinery is on fire. There is a gas leak. There are survivors from the earthquake. Okay, the hospital are at a triage level, at code red. You have civil commotion because people are looting from the stores and all. So civil commotion is actually happening over there. So you guys are going to bring this under control. So you guys decide what you're going to do. So it's a really simulator of a real scenario. Okay. So one of the characters over there, his role was a Russian general from Russia. But this guy is good, I really like him because he really became like the Russian general, like how the American movies portray. Okay, I really do not know how a real Russian general is. All I know is the one the American movies portray how a real Russian general is. and he's American anyway. So he said, no, I will be willing to help you. Not a problem. I have my troops, we can bring control and all that. And we looked at the situation. We don't have any other choice. Okay, fine, we'll work with you. Bring your troops and then we whispered to one another, like, you better keep a tab on this guy. He's coming to help, but what's his intention? And I tell you, this was a game, for crying out loud. It's a game, but we are playing it like as though it's a real scenario over here. And then after that, the game master came and said, okay, heavy Russian presence is causing a bit of discomfort among the citizens. You risk chaos, street protests, and all that. And then we got talking with one another and said, like, look, we have a leaking pipeline, gas pipe, we have oil refinery on fire, we have triage in the hospital, we have people looting. The last thing we want to deal with is some people protesting. Okay, right. So now let's see, how can we solve this matter? Now somehow, because of the Russian presence, the oil refinery fire has been put out, the gas pipe has been arrested, and some level of control came in. The hospital, we said we can manage it. Okay, we have the expertise, we can do it. So finally, we went to the Russian general and we told the Russian general, I think there's a bit of unrest in our place. You may want to pull your soldiers out. And he's good. He played his role very well. Based on his character, he played his role very well. Well, we can definitely pull out, but I'm sure nothing in this world is free, Could we work out a deal on the oil and all that? And then we were like negotiating, okay. Then finally we said, okay, fine. Look, this is what you're going to do. You're going to pull out your troops. Then we said, okay, you go on the media and tell the media that Russians have been advised to leave, and they are, they have sort of listened to what thing, and make that news go public. And we told them, look, pull out your forces. The oil refinery will have to be rebuilt. We will award the contract to you. But right now, pull out your forces. And once we did all this, we were all looking at each other like, what the hell did we just do? I mean, like, it was a game, but our emotions were real. And when we looked at the whole thing, we said, like, man, this is how governments are being run. Suddenly you start having a bit of like empathy for leaders. It's like not easy running a big thing. There are a lot of, that's why when I said about the games when you play, who are the players that I'm not seeing in this? And it worked so well over there. I mean, we had a bit of like half triumph and half guilt over there. It's like, what are we doing? But then we had a discussion about it. And we said, like, you know what? This is what the real world is like sometimes. And then we started having a bit of empathy. You see, this is what happens. It expanded our horizon about looking at a problem, not just looking at the problem as the problem, but what is the big problem around this problem. So it will help in finding solutions. It will help in drawing out policies. It'll empower you in putting you in a better position that way.
Okay. So that's a very interesting analogy there, right? So we are going to go on to another very interesting part of this whole discussion, which is actually how this COVID come in a game way, right? But before that, let's just say hello to all our friends first, who have already said hello to you, Jega. So we have Thai. Okay, hello Thai. We have Fakri. From all these friends are from Facebook. Alfred Neto. Okay. Alfred Neto also asked, who do you consider a good gamification expert? Who do you look to as a great gamification expert? Okay, so you can answer this later on. Thai said, he likes the idea of keep on running by adding more values continuously. And then Sivanes told the telco story is very interesting. And then Isaac said, sounds like Huawei and USA.
Okay, yeah, maybe.
All right. Okay, and then from LinkedIn we have Jasbir said hello. Okay, he has a series. She has a series of questions. a lot on the actual examples of game-based learning and all, which you can actually choose to answer later on also.
Okay, right.
She does quizzes in the classroom using Kahoot with smartphones, compete with her classmates like a game. Okay, so she also asks if gamification equals to animation. Okay, and then Pratpal Singh has asked the questions. And then there's another question on from Anand, which is actually, by the way, Jega, I agree on jumping on the online bandwagon. Speed doesn't mean hurrying recklessly. Okay,
Yeah, exactly, absolutely.
which is interesting point of view. All right. So, do you want to answer, like, who do you look to as a gamification expert from Alfred Netto in
Okay.
Facebook?
I am not so much into gamification, so I like to correct those things. People say I'm an expert in gamification. No, I'm more of a
Okay.
game-based learning person.
Okay.
So if you ask me who's my guru in gamification, in game-based learning, I will look up to Tyagi. Tyagi is a person that I really look up to, because he's all about trying to create simple games. And talk about in classroom learning, simple games are what we really need. We need multiple simple games. We don't need very complex games in that. Simple games in that. And Brian Rammer, another good friend of mine, a buddy of mine from Nasaga. So these are the guys that I sometimes look up to. If I have any questions, I go and ask them, bounce ideas and all. But in the world of simulation, it's a very closed world. I tell you, the world of simulation, because a lot of times the people who come up with simulations, business simulations, they keep it, they guard it as a secret, because it's their product. Okay, so that's where I like to network with if you want to network with people in the field of simulation, go and check out ISAGA or ISAGA, ISAGA, which is the International Simulation and Gaming Association. They do a conference once a year. This year supposed to be in India, and that's gonna definitely not gonna happen. And these guys are academics. So, but one thing you have to put up with academics. Academics, when they talk about simulation, they are going to go the whole 100 yards of the simulation. They will be very academic. They will look at from a theoretical perspective and all that. So, which I think is good, because we need people to look at it from a very academic perspective, and then we can bring it to the business world. So that's probably who I would look up to.
Okay. So Ambrose from Facebook has also said hello. Right. So now, what kind of game is COVID-19? This is the big question for today, right? And what can we...
Okay. I feel sometimes the way we approach COVID-19, see, if you look at COVID-19, our effort is we are trying to destroy the virus, or at least we are trying to cut the virus off, the chain. We can cut the chain, okay? Cut the chain. But the mission is like trying to end the virus.
Okay.
The virus doesn't want to end us. The virus is only looking for a host to live in. Apparently, it's not very intelligent right now. It's killing the host. Some host it's killing, some host it's going on. So if you look at it that way, we are trying to come up with a finite solution to a game that the virus is playing. The virus is actually playing an infinite game here.
Okay.
So what happened is that we put a hold on a lot of things. We say like, okay, let's stop this industry, and all. I think that for now it's okay, it's good. I'm not saying that strategy is wrong. That, like I said, in an infinite game, you'll have multiple finite solutions. This is one of the finite solutions. But as we move on, let's say if this game continues for about a year from now, or a year and a half from now, how are we going to be doing it? Will that mean that theaters will be closed for one whole year? Will that mean that there's no product launch where people cannot gather, no concerts, no gathering, movies will not be made, schools, what are going to happen to schools and all? So if we wait for a time for this to clear for us to start, that means we are playing a finite game. We might win, but depending, you see, in a finite and infinite, it's about who has the higher level of tenacity, stamina to pull through this game. okay? And I think the virus will win us anytime in terms of stamina wise, okay? So when we look at this whole thing from an infinite perspective, is that you start accepting that this is the new game. How are we going to play our game in this game right now? So like the social distancing is coming in, that's very good. But one thing that is missing right now, we are trying to go and look for a vaccine. Now, my views may not be going in line with some people's view and all that. I feel the bigger thing that we need is actually test kits, not vaccine.
Test kits.
Yes, we need test kits. We need test kits that are cheap, less than ringgit kind of test kits, where people can actually, like pregnancy kits and all that, where they can actually do a self-test. Because if we have test kits like that, immediately you can actually have a lot of tests and you can isolate people immediately. So you can still go to the movies, because if you can really test and see and before people entering the thing, yeah, it's clear, that's it. So the technology of testing is actually of a higher priority. Not to say I'm higher priority as in like don't work on vaccines are important, but we need to be working on test kits. And I don't know why that is not really being done so much. I mean, there were talks about it. We need a lot more test kits, and I think it's faster to produce a test kit than to produce a vaccine. And you don't have to go through the testing process that a vaccine has to go through. Vaccine is actually putting something inside the body, so that will go through its natural test process. Medically, it has to go through its efficacies and all. But test kits are different. We can always take that and start using it. So from a business perspective, is this right now? What we need to do is ask the question: how can we get back to normal in this new normal?
Right. That's a big one.
So that's a big one. So we know this game is going to go on, and I think it's already starting to happen in some sense. Some people are already moving into the fact that, like just today I was talking to one of the clients, and they said, like, and they're serious about going training. Okay, how can we do it? And then they even asked me, so has PSMB approved that 15 packs? I said, no, we just asked PSMB if you can allow for 15 packs. We'll let the ministry make a decision about that. We don't have a say in that, but they are looking forward to it. And their ideas are coming, like, how can we run a class of 15 people, socially distance everyone, and have the what is it, sanitizer there, check temperature. Right. If you need to check temperature twice a day, go ahead, do it twice a day, or in the morning and the afternoon, and keep a safe distance, and you can still get back to it. But the thing is, right now we need to think differently. We need to think from a perspective that this game is going to continue. What can we do in this game as this game continues? So if you change your perspective, how will theaters operate? I don't know. I don't have an answer. But people in the theater business will have to answer this question. How would you do it? Maybe there is actually a air sucker at the top of it that just pulls air up this way. Instead of the aircon blowing it, the air just pulls it up this way, so that as people breathe, the natural air will actually go upwards, so that you minimize contact with another person, and you can actually sit one seat apart, and you can still get back operation. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, but it starts with us starting to look at this game as an infinite game, and businesses has to get back to normal. So how do we get into normal from this new normal?
Which is actually very interesting, because like countries that took a certain path. For example, Sweden chose not to follow the typical path of doing this isolation, this MCOs and all, but they just chose to live life normally. But what happened was there were a lot of deaths in Sweden because they chose the path of achieving herd immunity. Okay, how do you think they played the game? And what they said, their reasoning is, eventually the numbers are still going to go on. The numbers are still going to grow, and so we want to achieve this immunity early on. Okay, what do you think about that?
Okay, it's a very it's a controversial situation, because although to some extent I somehow agree partly to it, the only downside of it is that the number of deaths that's going to happen, and it's going to
Yeah.
happen among the elderly. Okay,
Yes.
so that's the risk that they are taking to do that thing. Um, and they are not the only one who thought about it, because if you go back to all the news reports earlier, even in Malaysian context and all that, these ideas were actually happening, that
Yes.
you can't fight it, let it just go, and we'll figure it out from there. But the downside is because of the number of deaths and how it can affect the elderly people. That's why it became a very thing. See, the whole thing about COVID is that one of the game mechanics in COVID is
Yeah.
the real culprit. It's not the
Yes.
virus itself. The way
Okay.
it's transmitted is where the thing is, because we have lived with dengue
Yes.
for decades,
Right.
and we're still having to live with it. Every season the dengue comes back, we live with it. But the
Yes.
only thing about this is that because the one of the game mechanic in COVID is that the speed of it being transmitted, and that's the only thing that is against it. So I really don't have an answer to say whether I support that or not. But if you look at it, I tried putting it in one of our simulators. I actually have a software to simulate pandemic there. So I put some parameters, and um, you can do social distancing, it will solve, but it's a time also. The other way is to achieve herd immunity, because when we ran the simulators, it just when everyone gets red, but after that everything turns blue, and then
That is
everyone is green. Yeah, that means it's immunity.
okay.
But the thing is, if you can get the virus without dying, then I think that's a good strategy. The death is where the thing is. If it's just a matter of fever, I think, the faster you get it, I like to get it over with. If it's just a matter of fever, I say, please give it to me. Like how we treat chicken pox.
Yes.
Sometimes parents, they say, oh, you got chicken pox. Let's take our child. We want him to get chicken pox before going to school. How we in Malaysia we have a totally different perspective to how we handle chicken pox. We don't use vaccination for chicken pox, and
Yes.
we have lived with it. Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing about COVID is there are few parameters because what we originally thought that COVID is if you get it once, you don't get it again. But actually, you can get it 2 times, you can get it 3 times, as is already shown right now, right?
Yes. So that's again because when I put it into our own simulator that I was playing around with, it can happen again. So when we set the parameters for 90 days, assuming 90 days is when your immunity will stay for 90 days. So after 90 days, what happened? The things kept coming back.
Right.
So
Right.
the thing is, the only way to beat that is everybody has to get it quickly. Imagine you're having a national fever day or something. Everyone, you and I are probably having fever while having this session or what. Then it will probably solve. But it's the death. The
Yeah.
factor of death is what's putting a moral dilemma into the entire decision. So when moral dilemma comes in, it's not easy for politicians to make decisions. I tell you, I empathize with the politicians right now. It's not easy. Not all politicians, okay? But I empathize with our Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tan Sri Muhyiddin. I think they are trying their best. They are opening up the economy carefully. They understand. They know that the economic side has to come back, because
Yes.
the game has thing. If the game ends, players die off in the game cannot come back. The game of economy. So
Yes.
if you want the game economy to come back, you need to start back this. And I think what they're doing right now with all the precaution is one way of playing the infinite game. But it took some time, and I don't blame them, because we are all learning the game, just like any other game. When you first played your Kaku, I remember playing one game called Terraforming Mars. I would encourage you not to play the game, okay? Because 3 hours in the game, I couldn't understand what in the world was going on in the game. It was a very complex game about going and terraforming the planet Mars and making it in as a home where humans can go and form colonies over there. But whenever you play any game, there is a cycle, a learning curve. So to look at politicians and say that, why didn't they figure this out earlier? Why didn't they figure this out earlier? We can sit behind the desktop or our laptops and we can talk whatever we want to talk. They had to go through the learning curve for them to gain the wisdom to understand this is an infinite game and play the game accordingly. So let's just give them time for them to play the game and play the game, not win the game. You see, this is the thing about infinite games. You never win an infinite game. The winning of infinite game is to stay playing in the game.
Right. Okay. So Muihan has actually joined in the conversation. He said, Korea has actually mastered the test kits. They have actually like perfected, I think they have come up with a way to test in a mass way and quickly and probably cheaply also, right? And then Jamuna has said, great insights, Jega. She always likes the way you interpret information. Okay, I think I saw you presenting a graph the other day in Excel, right?
That was just based on the numbers, and I just tried to simulate if we have the numbers dropping at a certain rate, when will we be able to the graph will turn. My prediction was off by like about 4 days. I think the graph only turned after 4 days. But after that, I did not continue tracking that. But I think I have confidence that they are doing the right thing right now. And with all the precautions in workplace and all, soon we will bring it to some level of control. And I think we can bring it to a level of control. We just have to have a bit of patience in this whole thing and not shut down the economy, I'm seriously looking forward to the barber. Seriously.
Forward to the barber too.
Yeah, you don't have the problem. I wish even my partner Zyrol doesn't have the problem. We ordered some stuff from online for this thing where you can manage thing, and they put the date it will arrive is on the 20th or 22nd of May. I told my wife, by the time that comes, the barber shop might be open already. But even that, you see, you think about it. How can a barber operate in a safe way?
Yeah.
Is there something that they can wear where they are totally isolated from the person? That it's all in a certain way and how we do things. We just have to figure out a way how to go about doing it.
Yeah, we can't stop the economy for a long time because everybody will be affected, right? There's a cascading effect there.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect, domino effect, and I think the trigger point came when the hotels were starting to close, and it's not a very good sign, So I think it was a right decision. It came from people who have, I believe they have, sometimes when we look at the government, we kind of like make a conclusion about who is in the government. You see, a politician and government are two different entities. So I don't mind you having your perception about politician, but I think you need to have a good perception on the government, because I have seen some of these people. They are not the normal Malaysians. They are really the brainy ones that sits over there. They have done all the economic models. They have done all the simulations. They have access to data, and there are some data science people over there. They are doing the right things. Its only thing is that it comes through the mouth of a politician. It doesn't come from them. It comes through the mouth of a politician. So sometimes we have to trust it, and just go with it. But there are a lot of intelligent people working behind the scenes to really find out what's the best thing to do. So don't let 500 countries or 10 kilograms and 10 kilometers to deceive you from the fact that there are really highly intelligent people behind the scenes who are figuring things out. Okay, and one thing good about Malaysia is our politicians are actually listening to them. That's one thing good. They are actually listening to them, as opposed to some other countries. Okay, some other countries, the experts are outright telling you to do something, and something else is going on the outside.
Interesting. So Muihan was, just joined in again. He said hello, and Vimala said hello, Vimala Supaya, and your partner Zairul said yes, he doesn't have the hair problem. And Mawani said, yeah, she's jealous about that. Okay, and then Sivanesh said that he actually advised his hairstylist and he got a free haircut for the advice he gave.
Okay, Siva, I'll take it off offline with you.
So maybe you should talk to him on how to get a free haircut. Okay. So yeah, in terms of COVID, it's actually not an easy thing, and like you said, it's an infinite game. The game has changed forever, in for everybody, and some businesses are affected very badly because they are huge, and they can't make change so easily, right? So what do you say about what's your advice on businesses and how they can cope up with COVID-19?
Okay, I think one is that just about I think last week or what I posted something on trying to equate COVID-19 to Koda and Nokia, and I had a view that I don't think it's right. You can't equate COVID-19 situation to Koda and Nokia's case. See, Koda and Nokia actually had tremors. You see, every time a change comes, it comes with a certain tremor.
Yeah.
You can already see the sign. It's like, once again, I don't know why. I just have to explain from a game perspective. It's like when you roll the dice, you're going to come through the series of hotels over there, the other side. You will always get a sign of what is happening. The tremors usually come first before the real thing hits us. In the case of Koda and all, they just ignored it.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of the pandemic right now, if you say that the Koda situation, you can probably look at policymakers maybe, or you can look at thing, because some warnings actually came earlier about, I think even Obama was talking about it, that we need some plan about how we put things together. Okay, we leave that aside. But from a business perspective, this is equivalent to a tsunami, not a business change or not being able to cope or what. This is a tsunami. So to go to a tsunami victim and say that, you like to tell people, what, if you don't change, you're out of business and all that, is equivalent to going to a tsunami victim who is just, destroyed. The house is destroyed. Family, he can't find his thing, and going and telling him that, or her that, what, you should not be living by the coastal line. You should be living in the highland. Or you should not be living in this country where you are surrounded by this thing. You should live in place like in Podixon, where you're protected, from all the places. So I don't think it's the right thing. However, having said that, if people don't adopt things and don't understand that this game is an infinite game and don't do anything in the next 6 months, then yes, maybe we can say that's a Koda and a Nokia scenario. So my advice is that look at what's happening and start looking at what we can do in smaller scale. And you know what? The word here is prototype. Test it out. Put something, test it out. It fails, so what? You found out how it doesn't work. Try another one, test it out and all. But there's also another thing that we need to do. A part of educating ourselves, it's time for us to educate our customers as well. Whatever your industry is, the new norm, we need to educate customers that under this new norm, we cannot do certain things. Now, coming back to our own industry, which is training, I can speak from there because that's the business that we do. Client said, can it be as effective as classroom program? And I'll be honest with you, no. I mean, obviously, no. I mean, can you tell me that you talking to your child via Skype or whatever is same as you talking to your child while they are there? It's different, right? But talking via Skype is better than not talking at all. Talking via Zoom is better than not talking at all. So there is something that can be done. So what we do is we educate the client to tell, look, there are some things that we can achieve through online learning. And there are some things that we cannot get it done 100% as much as what it would be. So the client starts understanding, okay? Because even today during the thing, and people said, you should not be using Zoom and all that. Everybody's jumping on Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams jerked twice in 2 separate meetings. Audio went off, and I'm presenting the tender, presentation, and the thing just dropped, and like I had to go back in, and things. So there's a lot of technological challenge behind doing things. Our networks are not fully ready. So this is the time we need to also tell customers, educate them. Look, these are all expected. It may happen. Suddenly the thing might drop. So that means we may have that as a disclaimer in our proposals as well. Okay, in the event the network is unstable, the training will be postponed, and therefore we will not be held liable for that. And that they must agree, because there are some things outside our area of control. Okay, so I think one is prepare yourself, second is start educating your customers as well.
Right. Any other advice you have for the training community in terms of facing COVID-19?
I think just don't be so bitter about things, I've seen some people's posting. I can sense the desperation in them when I see their social media posts. Is that but I also like what some of them are doing. They are all experimenting. There are a lot of them are experimenting. Some have not done video, they have gone into video. I mean, people like Jamuna and all that is one example. Never seen her video except for her cooking video and yoga video. Suddenly you have content video from her. It's like amazing. But this is where everyone is actually figuring out something new. People like our friends Wesley is coming out with his own series. He started it way earlier. So right now the transition for him is not that difficult. So a lot of us are doing something. My thing about the training industry is just experiment. Just go and try something. Minimum is at least you have a talking head session. You can actually do something in that. Just start, because as you start, you will be able to add later. You'll keep being able to add something else new to that, and you just take it from there. But experiment, prototype. We just did one prototype a day before yesterday that failed miserably. I'm open. I'll tell you, because we tried creating a game. But one thing is, the entire game was developed remotely. This is the first time we developed a game totally remotely. Everybody was from their home. We used a whiteboard and we were discussing. We did the prototype. We did the testing all online and all. We found it to be nicely working out. Everything had the debrief points and everything was going very, very well. Our challenge right now is technology. As we put it in front of people who have not seen the game before and we tested it with them, we started seeing the kind of problems that actually happen. It's not easy. Some people have a bad mouse and that's it. They can't even move the object properly. And then the interaction level, how do you give instruction? Sometimes the games are a bit complex. How do you give instruction? So we realized that we need to automate this thing. We need to probably figure out a computer programming in it. And that comes with cost, and whether we are ready to do that. But then we looked at it, does it mean that all this effort is wasted? Because 2 games that we created during this COVID, and looks like, what is it, a wasted effort? We said, no, it's not a wasted effort. This is a great game for offline, for analog. So we'll wait until the time turns out to be good. We'll launch it when the times are better. So we discovered that it doesn't work here, but where else can we use it? So if we did not embark in this, we would not have discovered that. So keep embarking into discoveries. You see, the thing is this, you have to start having a perspective of not boundaries, but horizon. See, when you start looking at boundaries means it's like the flat earth guys, you just sit down there, you look at it, oh, that's a boundary. But when you look at a sea, or you're flying over a thing, what you see is a boundary. But 20 minutes later, you see a new boundary. 20 minutes later, you see a new boundary. So what you're actually seeing is not really a boundary. What you're seeing is actually a horizon. The question we need to ask is, what is beyond this horizon? So I can see this far, but I know that's a horizon. There's something beyond. But I will not know what is beyond until I have go and explore the edge of that horizon that I see right now. You go and explore the edge of the horizon, you start seeing a new horizon. Then you go to the next, then you start seeing a new horizon. And keep exploring the horizon. I mean, come on. This is what we tell our classrooms. don't be afraid to change. Be on and all that. This is a time to practice it. This is the time. Put where the money where the mouth is.
Yes, exactly. Because as trainers, we always say, get ready for change. Change is inevitable, and change is going to come. And then here we are, right here, we have change in front of our eyes happening, right?
Yeah.
And change in
So
a really,
the first
really
2
big.
months, I think it's okay. First 2 months is okay. Sorry, first 2 months we are trying to figure out, and it's a good thing if you did not jump into something, it's okay. That means you're observing, you're seeing what's going on. But right now we are starting to move. Take baby steps. Take steps and just move on.
Okay, so I think with that, let's finish up soon. So if any friends here who have any questions, last questions, just drop in before we finish. And thanks a lot for being in the show. Again, if you want to see our past recordings of our previous shows, you can always look up. It's right in the comments below. And if you want to reach Jega, you can always reach him up. He's available in LinkedIn and also Facebook under his name. Okay, let me just take out this banner so you can actually see his name up here. So you can look up his name in both LinkedIn and Facebook. And this recording
LinkedIn
of today's
will be
video,
preferred, LinkedIn will be preferred, yeah.
LinkedIn is his new preferred choice, I see.
Yeah, no, because I try to keep the professional side there. Facebook is sometimes with people who I have had at least a personal connection or something, because that's why the a bit of crazy side is on the the failed Dalgona coffee, masala tea all comes in Facebook. It doesn't come out on LinkedIn.
You should see that side of him also in Facebook. All right. So with that, I think let me just say, so hi Jega. Sumati said she's also experimenting with a few things. I noticed she's experimenting with a lot of video. So is Jamuna also from LinkedIn. So again, friends, thank you all so much for watching the show. If you want to reach Jega, you can always reach him up. You can check up his names down here. Jegatheeswaran Manoharan. You can look him up in LinkedIn, particularly for business and work. And the recording will be released shortly. You can actually look up the same link and find the recording below in the comments. All right. With that, we will say bye-bye, and we'll see you again, Jega. It was a very good conversation.
Thank you so much for your opportunity. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate this. Thank you very much, Vyasa.
Thanks. Thank you again, Jega. I'll see you again sometime soon.
Sure.